Oh yeah. What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Blue Falcon coming to you with another video. So this one is going to be very interesting. This is from Piers Morgan, and apparently it's regarding the Me Too movement. So it's called Men Should Be Frightened, whatever that means. So we're going to check it out. But if you didn't know, just understand that my point of view tends to be centered around the Bible. If you don't like that, I don't give two shits. I'm not trying to change who I am to appease you. I'm just going to bring what I believe are certain principles in the Bible that pertain to us in this current day, time, and era. All right, you guys. So let's actually head into it so you can kind of see it.
Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Revelations about disgraced movie director Harvey Weinstein's abuse of women sparked a global reckoning with predatory male behaviour. But 5 years on from what became known as the Me Too movement, there's a growing backlash. Some influential people argue it's become divisive, pitting the sexes against each other with an assumption of male guilt, leaving many young men feeling marginalised. Recently, you've had two people at the forefront of that backlash, albeit with very different styles and rationales. He's psychologist Dr. Jordan Peterson.
People have been after me for a long time because I've been speaking to disaffected young men. Now, what a terrible thing to do that is.
Okay.
And earlier this week, I spoke to Andrew Tate, the so-called toxic male influencer who's now banned from social media. The full explosive interview airs tomorrow night, but here's a little taster of that.
I believe that confident, strong men who stand up and protect and provide for women are a good thing for the world and a good force for the world. And I don't think that I put a magic spell on anybody. I think there's a whole bunch of men in the world who understands my value. And if men grow up to be like me, you're gonna have a whole bunch of people with no criminal record, dedicated athletes, who protect and provide for the people close to them, are fantastic for the economy. And I'm certainly not the worst influence out here, Piers.
Well, clips of both of those interviews have exploded online. Literally millions of people have been viewing.
So this is interesting already because, you know, if anybody ever seen the original Piers Morgan versus Andrew Tate, I mean, Andrew Tate is interesting because Andrew Tate, apparently he's Muslim now, and you know, it's not technically the Bible he follows the Quran, but a lot of the principles are very similar. And I just find it interesting that we live in a daytime and era where if a man actually wants to protect women, if he actually values the sanctity of a woman's virginity, that you are viewed as toxic. That you are viewed as toxic, that somehow you're doing something wrong and you're abusing women because you don't want them to go out there and work. You know, us men, you know, I go to work every day, and best believe I ain't doing backflips. I ain't doing cartwheels. I ain't jumping up for joy just to go to work. And I don't know what, to this day, I don't understand what has deceived the women to want to go to work. But if you speak this way, you are toxic. Now, that's not saying that women are not going to do anything in the house. There's a lot of things to do at the house. In fact, that's the highest calling in the world. You know, you being a mother, taking care of your children, taking and guiding the house. I mean, that's a very important task. Because after all, if you ain't doing it, what are we going to have to do? Spend money on a nanny? Spend money on a babysitter to take care of your children when you could do it for yourself? You see how more money is going out rather than just keeping it in? But we're toxic. It's crazy, but that's a short digression. There's going to be a lot more within the context of this video, so stay tuned.
Jordan Peterson, for example, the whole interview has been viewed 5.5 million times on our YouTube channels, rightly or wrongly. There's clearly a huge groundswell of interest, at the very least, in their views, if not support. So was Me Too an overdue reckoning, or has it become a damaging battle in a raging culture war? Isabel still with me, plus political journalist Ava Santino, conservative commentator, a young man who agrees with Peterson and Andrew Tate, Connor Thomason. Connor, welcome to the show. I'll start with you.
Did you guys just peep that? Homeboy, he agree with Jordan Peterson. He's smiling. Andrew Tate. And they zoomed right in his face when he did that, man. That's hilarious. But let's get it.
I found it very interesting interviewing Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate, both very controversial characters in different ways, both positioned as a kind of kings of toxic masculinity. I certainly didn't think Jordan Peterson was that. And when it came to Andrew Tate, I couldn't really conclude after 90 minutes of grilling him. I gave him quite a hard time. I couldn't really conclude what he had done that was so bad that he had to be expunged from social media life altogether. But it showed me the sensitivity around all this. And if any man now behaves in a way that looks like it's toxic masculinity, bang, they're expunged. Is in that process masculinity itself getting expunged and demonized?
I would say so. I mean, I'm sure that you'll have this experience with your own relationships, Piers, in that women, if you say something controversial, whether it's something on the Peterson side of the spectrum or on the Tate side of the spectrum, a little bit more explosive or a little bit more academic, some women are very much drawn to a man who can be a bit more confrontational, say exactly what he thinks. It's the verbal new version of what gladiators used to do in the arena way back.
Well, certainly, I think Ava and Isabel are laughing because they know that they're drawn to me in that way because of my combative nature. But Ava, you're smirking and laughing.
Man, this guy is such a clown, man. Or that's why people are drawn to me, because of my controversial nature. This is crazy, but I want you to peep something very interesting, because if anybody saw the original interview with Piers Morgan and Andrew Tate, even Piers Morgan agreed, will say, and he had said it in, if you just rewind, but he said that he was grilling Andrew Tate really hard. I mean, this guy was just cutting Andrew Tate in the middle of his speech. He was just attacking him, calling him toxic and this and misogynist and whatever terms you want to throw at him. And it was just crazy because here you can see he said that he couldn't quite grasp what exactly Andrew Tate did that was so wrong. I mean, what was so controversial that it merited being banned from Meta, from Twitter, from YouTube, from all the social platforms. I mean, and you heard Andrew Tate for himself. I mean, like, is he so bad when you got rappers out there condoning shooting each other, drugs, violence? Come on, man. But let's get right back into it.
There's a serious point here. A lot of young men feel they're getting disenfranchised by society. They're all being over-demonized, that any attempt to be the traditional male figure is now being rubbished and called toxic.
Well, I mean, if you really felt that and you really went out there and you were an alpha male, then you wouldn't be bothered about a bunch of women telling you that you were.
Well, you would if you get cancelled, like Andrew Tate. If you get banned from.
I mean, he's hardly been cancelled. He was on your program, which is on national television.
But it's the only platform actually he's had for a long time, because all the social media companies banned him, literally banned him. Right. He had his email gone, his Google gone, his Facebook.
All right. So check this out, y'all. You see, I want you to really peep the definition of a snake. And you see what Piers Morgan is he's a straight up snake. Now, he just happens to be on or it seems like he's on the side of Andrew Tate. But again, this is a person that, if you watch this clip, right, it's very clear that this guy cares nothing about anything. He just cares about ratings. Because when he was with Andrew Tate, he was just, like he said himself, grilling Andrew Tate, going real hard against Andrew Tate. And here, for the sake of views, he got to play devil's advocate. Now he's putting Andrew Tate on this pedestal, and he's condemning this girl's mindset, this Me Too mindset, right? So, but yeah, this guy's a straight up snake. But
gone. It all went down like dominoes.
Well, he's still on there, very, very prolific on there. I can't move for clips of him.
Yeah, but they're not generated by him now.
But that's been for quite some time.
But should he be punished that way?
But what is punished? What is punished?
Punished is where.
Right. What is punished? Well, I mean, okay, let's break it down. I mean, after all, we have the right to say whatever we want in this country, right? At least supposedly, right? Freedom of speech. So, I mean, if you on a social platform and you have the right to say whatever you want, but all of a sudden you're attacked for it, is that not being punished? He was making that was his source of living, his source of income. So if you removing his source of income, is that not being punished? I mean, what else do you want from the guy? You know what I'm saying? It's just the mindset is so bizarre. You know what I'm saying? But this is what's so scary, because again, it's freedom of speech. Now we can go into, oh, you're not allowed to scream fire in a movie theater. There's some things that make sense, right? You don't want to endanger the general public. We get that. But what's so dangerous about men being masculine? I mean, especially in this world where a bunch of men are running like effeminate women. What's so wrong about actually returning to a masculine frame, a masculine mindset? What's so wrong about wanting to protect your woman? And if that means that she's not talking to every Dick, Tom, and Harry that, tweets her in her DMs or whatever the case may be, right? What's so wrong about that? I'm telling you, the mindset is just...
It's where companies take a decision which, in my view, in this case, was perverse, because they still allow, for example, the Ayatollah of Iran to have a Twitter account.
Yes.
So there's no consistency here at all.
Well, but however, we love a bit of free market. I'm sure you do, judging by that suit, which is lovely. But social media companies are private companies.
You're not
they can do whatever
they
can do.
I'll
whatever
take all the
they like.
objectification I like.
Of course you will, yeah. All right, Isabel.
But Ava, your point about, if men were that alpha, then they wouldn't be that bothered by this, doesn't really help us when it comes to boys growing up. And that is one of my worries, that for teenage boys now, they are so terrified of the consequences of putting a foot out of line. It's hard enough being a young teenager, working out how things are, working out how to do dating and all of that, without the terror that if you touch in the wrong place at the wrong time, you may find that your whole life is destroyed.
See, I
and
like
there is
that
far
terror.
Too much. Well,
I like that.
As a
I
mother
think
of
that
Man, you guys, I don't know who this woman is, but, thank God for her. I mean, because, again, that is the fear, right? And as we mentioned, it's called Men Should Be Frightened. I don't know why anybody should be motivated by fear. I mean, I said a biblical mindset, right? I mean, in the Bible, it said that God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of love, love, power, sound mind, right? So what I don't understand is, why are we trying to motivate people out of fear through this Me Too movement? And let me just tell you the hypocrisy of it, because it's just like, we act as if we never were teenagers. We act like we never understood these hormones and what it allows us to do. Are these people predators because you touch a girl? Are they predators? Do they deserve imprisonment? They deserve for them to just be canceled on all social media, right? Because they touch a girl, which there's so many, different. I'll give you a perfect example, right? Back in the day, I was dating this girl, right? And it was so crazy, the hypocrisy, right? So, I was touching this girl on her leg, right? And what's crazy is she was telling me a story of some other boy that she, was with during the time when she was in prom. And she was saying how creepy that dude was, because the guy was touching all up on her, and he had his hand on her leg and all this stuff. And I'm looking at myself like, well, like, am I crazy here? After all, I'm doing the same thing. And I literally asked her, I was like, hey, woman, like, am I making you feel uncomfortable? Because I literally got my arm on your leg. Like, let me know so that I'm not trespassing against you in any way, shape, or form. And she told me, nah, you good. I like you. So this is the thing. So it's not that the action is wrong, right? It's not that the action is wrong. It's just that some arbitrary factor of whether you like somebody or not. I mean, if you didn't like the person, why you went to prom with him? Right? Why you went to prom with him? Or rather, can you just magically, out of thin air, be interested in a person at one point in time, and they do something that causes you to be disinterested in that person, and therefore, me too, I don't like to be touched this way. Oh, I'm being harassed, sexual harassment, right? Where is the line? right? And it's not like these men are drugging these girls. I understand that context. If a guy was drugs a girl, rapes a girl, I get that. That is totally, that is criminal to the highest degree. I'm not debating that. But that is an actual charge. Let's not go crazy and overboard because a boy touches a girl. Which, later on in the video, I think they mention it, but I don't necessarily condone boys and girls really mingling with each other anyway, because of my stance from a biblical standpoint. However, what I am saying is that when these things do arise, are we going to therefore now demonize these boys, these teenagers, men, as some form of criminal that deserve to be punished to the highest degree, all in the sake of Me Too? It gets a little bit abstract.
Teenage boy, I don't like
Really?
that
That's
terror.
the
I
most
do.
malicious thing I've ever heard.
That is
I think that
awful.
men should be frightened
I think
to
you'd
touch
feel
women in a way
differently
that
if you
they're
were,
not
if
comfortable
you were.
with.
But we're talking about
Yeah, but we're not talking
teenagers,
about. We're not
children.
talking about.
We're talking
but
about
it's an
young
interesting thing
children.
that you see. I would say that attitude actually is part of the problem too. That is that's to me toxic femininity.
It is.
That
Right.
is saying you should all be terrified, you men, if you put one.
Of assaulting.
Well, I think we all understand what sexual
What is an
assault is.
assault?
What Isabel's talking about is that young teenage clumsiness
really
in many
hard.
cases, which is now being recategorized as assault. Is that a problem?
It's not being recategorised as assault. It's always been assault. It's just we're finally talking about it.
I don't agree with that.
But
It's ridiculous.
Teenage boy fumbling with
touch
teenage
on the
girl
knee.
is not
Not
it's
even
not
that.
in most cases assault, is
Do
it?
you remember Aziz Ansari, right? Half the heels of Me Too, half the heels of Harvey Weinstein rightly
Yeah.
being dragged through the courts and should have got way worse than just prison time, in my opinion. Aziz Ansari had a consensual relationship with a woman. She felt a bit awkward and
Yeah.
afterwards rescinded consent and he was lumped in and he had his
No,
career
I'm with you
in
on
half
that one.
cancelled.
I'm with
So then
you.
why
Yeah.
should men be afraid of that?
Because he didn't touch her without consent, did he?
No, but she
But
rescinded his consent and
how are
she
young
saw
boys
that then
supposed to
as the same
navigate
thing.
this, the whole
Yeah, I
thing?
agree.
I'm thinking
Wow, that's a very good point. I mean, he actually literally touched on the point that I just made before. I mean, like, again, if you're interested in a person at one point in time and then all of a sudden he calls it rescind, that consent later on, now does that discredit all the previous experiences you had with that individual when everything was all cool? You get what I'm saying? What happened if the girl did something that caught, I won't go too far, but what happens if, I don't know, the guy just does one thing out of nowhere and the girl just becomes disinterested? And now what? I have the right to accuse him of being, or accuse the man of sexually assaulting the girl? And the thing is, this is why it was very important for that other lady, the one that's not part of the Me Too movement. That's why I appreciate her so much, because you got to think about it. She has a son, right? So she can see from the other side. She can see from a mother's point of view. You see, if you don't have children, it's easy for you to just completely demonize men and say that men are this way and that way. But if you raise your own boy and you know their temperament, you know their mannerism, you know their character, and you know that there's nothing within that child to dare want to actually assault a woman, should his whole life and career just be totally finished because of just the claim of sexual assault with no proof, no DNA evidence? There's no marks, no scratches on the individual, no bruises. It's just, I felt uncomfortable, so we're gonna kill his entire career.
my
have-
teenage son, he's 14, 15. What's he supposed to say? Would you mind if I put
Isabel,
my
you are an
hand- I mean,
extremely
come
strong
on,
woman. I
come
know
on.
in your house you're teaching them the difference between assault and then
Of
coming on
course,
to
of
someone.
course.
I know you are.
But what we're talking about is, it's been very interesting watching the Me Too movement and the Time's Up movement, how it's all developed. Because a lot of very bad people, Harvey Weinstein and others, got their due comeuppance. We can all agree with that.
Yeah.
This is not even something to be debated. We're really talking about the grey line, right? Where is that grey line?
Yeah.
How do you navigate it? When you're an experienced adult and you've been around the block in many ways, you can navigate that much more intelligently and with emotional intelligence than you can if you're a teenage boy. And I think the point Isabel makes is a good one. I've had 3 sons in their 20s. I've always taught them to be respectful to women. I believe
Right.
they are. But I do think it's really hard for a 16, 17-year-old boy now in this environment to know even how to start
they are all
having kind of some kind of physical relationship with a woman.
Those good boys are all terrified. I know that from talking to my son. He's just like, I'm just not going there. Is that healthy?
Yes, I think it is actually. I think it's better to not have a physical relationship than to have one that could ruin a woman's life.
But then...
Ooh, okay. So this is... I hope I'm making sense here, because this is where I actually... It may sound like I'm switching up, but I'm not. However, I actually have to agree, and this is why this topic has many nuances that we have to discuss, and I don't even know if the time will permit to discuss all the nuances. But you see, here we have a situation where I actually agree because of my stance from a biblical standpoint. I actually believe that men and women should not, especially boys and girls. And then in this context, they're talking about, teenagers, where their hormones, like we all were, if you're an adult, we all were teenagers at one point. So we know our hormones, we're just getting used to them. It's hard to control, whatever the case may be. There are many actions that you will commit out of not being rational, right? I'm not here to try to kill a boy's career for that. The same way I'm not going to kill a woman's career because she chooses to twerk her ass on social media. So therefore, I guess every boss that sees her twerking in the future shouldn't hire this woman, right? No, I'm not going to say that. Whatever she does in her youth, I think to some degree, there's got to be some level of understanding that, okay, this is stuff that people engaged in out of ignorance to an extent, right? Like, we're not talking about in cases of murder or like doing some heinous crime, right? We're just talking about just little childish stuff, right? It doesn't make it right, it doesn't make it any better or any right, but it's just little childish stuff. We all make mistakes. I'm not here to cast a stone. Like, if I, as sinful as I was, right, who am I to dare try to condemn every child that comes after me and try to lay the hammer of the living God on that individual and pronounce them these sinners that deserve to go to jail? And no, I'm not going to do that. With that being said, you see, this is where I do believe fundamentally, from a cultural standpoint, we have actually failed these children, because knowing the propensity that us as humans have to actually mingle, and we know in the mingling of men and women that there's going to be that sexual tension that rises. This is exactly the reason why I think it's best, and not just me thinking it's best, but from a biblical standpoint, they would separate. Men would be off doing tasks with men, women would do tasks with women. And if you're not married, you should not be engaging in any type of real dialogue one with another. You see, from a biblical standpoint, if a man was interested in a woman, he would go to the woman's father, present himself to the father and say, I have interest in your daughter, in which case the father would vet the man for however long he chooses to please, and then he will bring forth the decision to his daughter. Are you interested in this guy, right? And in cases of arranged marriages, the woman may not even have a choice. But either way, the decision of the father is very paramount, because he was a boy at one time. So don't you think he would know how to judge a boy? You get what I'm saying? Or a young man? Right. That's why it's important to go through the father. But we have all this sneakery going on, all this subtle ways where men go behind the scenes and they laying with these women without the father's consent, and then these girls are losing their virginity, these girls are getting babies out of wedlock. It just creates a whole entire mess. And I don't think it's fair to condemn a person for a mistake that they have made in their youth that's going to follow them for the rest of their life. But it is still, we got to understand that just because I'm not here to condemn them, there are some mistakes that you do and engage in that's going to follow you for the rest of your life. It is what it is. So to circumvent the mistake altogether, it's probably best to simply keep them separate, like the Bible always told us to, right? With that being said, though, there is another side to this story, right? Like me, I may have a particular mindset, and I may think a certain way. Like my mindset obviously is a biblical mindset, and obviously you can see that I don't think like majority of people in the world, if you want to call it that way, I don't think like they do, right? I don't even want my child to be in the school system, right? So I understand that my mindset is totally alternative mindset altogether, right? So what about the people now who aren't blessed to homeschool their children, who are sending their children off to public school, and therefore they have to mingle with the opposite sex? See, this is where, sometimes when you teach to the ideal, we tend to forget that there are certain factors that actually exist, right? So, it's like that concept of teaching sex ed in schools, right? I don't particularly like it. I'm not fond of it, but I understand why it actually needs to happen, because let's face it, right? The ideal is that you should be getting married. You should be having sex when you're married. That's the ideal. But just because it's the ideal, is everybody going to follow the ideal? No. Because again, that's just mankind. That's just how they are. Mankind is so wicked, right? It don't matter how much times you preach, recycle, men are going to continue to litter, right? It doesn't matter how much time you talk about not to speed, there are still lunatics out on the road that's going to speed. So in which case, when these things happen, what do we have to do then? So that's why we have to come up with precautionary measures, whether it be holding up road signs, or in sex ed they give people condoms and whatever the case is. Again, I don't agree with it, but I understand why it exists, because everybody is not going to follow the prescribed method. So now we got to find an alternative route to help those individuals. And this is getting back on the video. This is where it kind of gets a bit odd, because she's here saying that yes, I believe that men and women, boys and girls should be separated, right? And again, I already said I agree with that mindset, but that is a very narrow-minded mindset, and I'm myself, I'm aware of it, and that's the reason why I understand that there's a lot of nuances. Yes, to some extent, men and women should be separated unless they are married. But in these cases where people are out there, I don't know why would you want to be out there, but you're there already, so let's deal with it. Because you're in this public school system, by all means, now you got to come up with precautionary measures. And what we're going to do, are we going to make all schools, all boys schools, all girls schools? Those schools exist. Maybe that's a solution. Maybe that's a possible solution. But again, I already know not everybody's going to follow it. And I think it's actually very disingenuous that this woman who, I don't know, maybe she's trying to sell the idea that she was never a teenager. Maybe that's what she's trying to do, sell this idea that she was never a teenager and she just popped out of the womb on a full-grown adult, and she never had to deal with the hormones or anything of that sort. But that's not the reality, right? These hormones are real, and children do make mistakes.
How do they ever start?
Well, don't. If you're not 100% sure,
What are we going
don't.
for?
What are you going to have? A bunch of neutered boys who
But
never
it's
had...
so obvious.
We actually do
It's
have that.
like-
Gen Z is having far less sexual relationships
Yes,
than any
they
ever before.
are. It's true.
And
young
hang
people
on.
have stopped having sex.
I agree with the first part of your sentence, actually. If you're not willing to have a sexual relationship with clearly defined lines, don't have one. And so I actually told my mates at university, don't sleep around with girls. 1, girls don't bring a guy home that you don't know what he's capable of. 2, guys, don't bring a girl home if you think that possibly she could have a false accusation against you.
Can I?
Man, this right here, I don't know if I'm going to even get through this whole thing. I really don't, because there's just so much good nuggets. But you see, he's touching on a thing that I think is very painful for a lot of women, right? We want to throw this me too all in people's face, but we never actually look at the other side of the situation. Again, let's just take something as simple as my own history with that girl I mentioned earlier on in this video, right? Yeah, she didn't like this guy touching her, but she liked this guy touching her, right? What's the difference? We both doing the same act, but I guess it's arbitrary, right? Whether it was because of my physical appearance or whatever state of mind she was in at the time, but it's all arbitrary. But here's the thing that we're not touching on: the fact that these women want it too. I mean, last time I checked, it takes two to tango. You get what I'm saying? It takes two to tango. So why are we trying to act like these women aren't actually in these situations with these guys, right? Like, what would possess a girl in the middle of the night to be dressed all skimpy and be with this guy? Oh, I was just trying to hang out. You were just trying to hang out. I mean, like, you can't talk to the dude via text. You can't just call the dude. I mean, that's what I did back in the day. You have to, in the middle of the night, with your boobs hanging out, your ass cheeks hanging out, and talking to a guy. And so then when something happens, you see, again, there's nuances in that in itself. Why were you dressed that way? But you see, when I present certain things like that, then you're being misogynist, or you being toxic, or you being traditional, or whatever the terms you want to use. But I mean, that's the reason why, in my personal opinion, we have to go back to a biblical mindset. You know, in the Bible it says a woman should not gad abroad as the men do. Why the hell are these girls finding themselves in this predicament? Sit your ass at home. And it's not just for the girls, for these boys too. You're with a girl, you don't know if she's actually fully interested in you, and then you touch her, now me too. Sit your ass at home. I mean, I wasn't even, again, we all don't have the model parents. And I'm not even saying my parents were the model parents. But when I was a child, man, I was well into my 20s before I could even stay up past 11 o'clock. I was well in my 20s. Man, if I was at home by like 8 o'clock, there was something severely wrong. I don't know what these teenagers are doing out so late. Partying, drinking, having sex, doing all this debauchery. Sit your ass at home. I mean, I can't make this any clear enough. But, Nick, Blue Falcon, you know, you're old school. You're an old man. You know, I don't got no grades, but you're an old man. You know, go sit your ass under a rock. You know what I'm saying? Go underneath a rock like a hermit, because you clearly don't know the time that we're living in. Man, please, I ain't trying to buy none of that shit. It's safe for us all if you simply do not engage in these activities, especially in this day and age when the lines are just so blurred. You don't know what you can do to a woman without you being accused. And again, hence, hint, why I said go to the father. If the father gave you the okay, right, and it's written down as a contract, okay, at that point in time, you are literally giving me the authority to be with your daughter, and now she's with me. I can do as I please with her, and there is no blurriness. There ain't no, oh, I was raped. No, it was all consensual, because there was a contract with me and the father. Yeah, I know. Go under a rock.
I make another point here, which
I find, I mean, look, that sentence to me, when I was your age, right? How old are you?
23.
23. When I was your age, the idea you would even have that sort of thought process.
Yeah, I wouldn't have those
unthinkable.
sort of mates that would ever cross the line, so I wouldn't have to have that conversation with any of my friends.
Don't throw my mates in with a bunch of violent people.
And is there a certain purity here I'm detecting in a certain type of feminist who thinks that they're all unimpeachable, and that this is all one-way traffic, and that only men can be toxic?
No,
because I've got to enlighten you. I've met quite a few women in my life who are pretty toxic themselves, and I don't see the debate being framed around that at all.
No, but the point is that we're still in a situation where only 5% of rape cases actually even go to trial,
which is ridiculous.
But that's the extreme end of it, isn't it? You're talking about
Thank you. That's a very extreme end of the situation. I mean, why is it?
But David, we can all agree that's.
Why is it that we have to jump all the way to the extremes whenever you're just talking about just things that are just common sense? Why do we have to jump overboard and say that this person got raped? You know what I'm saying? No, look, and again, it's only 5% of these cases where it's an actual legitimate rape. But again, this is what's so dangerous about this movement, Me Too, because you're literally putting the longevity of these human beings' careers at stake, their livelihood at stake, just because you're saying Me Too. And I'm again, unless you have children, you probably would never actually have this level of reasoning to realize what you as a woman are doing to these young boys. Like, when you have a child for yourself, a young boy, and you understand that there's a woman out there who potentially was interested in your son, but because she got butthurt somewhere along the line, now she wants to just throw the term rape, Me Too, and that now your son is at risk of being put in prison, of losing his career. When you in that position, that predicament, maybe then you will have a little bit more compassion to why there are people coming against this movement. I'm gonna leave the link down in the description. This video was long enough. It was fun for me. I hope it was fun for you to even dissect this topic. If you did like the video, please like, subscribe, comment down below, share with your friends, because it's definitely would help the channel a lot. But again, I really want to hear from your comments, because I'm actually very curious, like, what is the mindset? Like, am I really that crazy about this Me Too movement? Am I really that outdated? Or is there someone out there that actually understands, like, this thing is really, that is the true definition of toxic? I mean, just like slandering someone's name. I mean, and again, the Bible did say thou shalt not bear false witness. But you see, that's what I'm saying, right? Like, slandering someone's name. Please chime in on the comments, because that's what I'm actually more interested about, because I want to be able to share that dialogue with you guys who watch this video. With that being said, Blue Falcon over and out.
Game to win. Game hard.